In this section of the application, the employer is able to add and remove employees from the database. This is performed by two different scripts, the create droid script and the destroy droid script. If you'll remember, droid is simply a facetious term for an employee other than the manager. So looking in detail at first of all, at our create droid script, the task that needs to fulfill is to add a new droid to the database, and then to grant privileges to the new droid. To add the details to the employees table, we use a very simple insert statement. This adds information to the particular employee that we've just added to the database. Because the employees table contains in the title column a default value of droid, we don't, strictly speaking, have to add anything into the title column. For the sake of explicitness, however, we can add it in as droid if we wish. The next, rather more complicated part of this script is to grant user privileges to the droid. This is done by a series of grant statements. Now, let's break this down a little bit. String variable 3 is effectively the username that the employee is going to use to log on to MySQL. And this is created by the application and is simply a result of concatenating the first name with the surname of the employee. This is the employee's password, which they can either choose themselves or can be given to them by the boss. And these two variables stand in for the particular privilege level that we're going to grant the employee and the table on which we're going to grant that privilege. The two different kinds of privileges that we're going to work with are the all and select privileges. And this will be different for different tables. We want them to be able to add and update customers, the same for films and for copies. We want to be able to let them add new films, and we want to be able to let the films be associated with artists, so we need all privileges on those tables too. We only need select privileges for the droids on employees, genres and charges. We don't want them to be able to select how much the videos cost to hire. We don't want them to be able to change the structure of the genres table, and we don't want the employees to have any kind of access to their own data, apart from the select access, which allows them to log on in the first place. So essentially the two lists of tables are split up depending on whether we grant them all privileges or only select privileges. So the way this works in the application is that we simply run a query like this several times so that we can be really specific about which privileges we're granting. We can use a series of different variables to feed in the all or select depending on which of these tables we're currently processing. We'll take a look at the way this works within the script itself in a moment. Let's first of all take a quick look at the destroy droid.php script. First thing we need to do is to get the username of the droid. Then we need to remove the droid from the database. And then we need to revoke all that droid's privileges in terms of its status as a MySQL user. Then we need to get all the different droid IDs for a drop-down so that the manager can choose the droid that he wishes to destroy from a drop-down on the form. Of course, destroy droid is probably an over-dramatic way of putting it. All we're doing is we're firing an employee and we're removing all the information from the database. So first of all, we need to get the username of the droid in question. We already have their ID because we've used the drop-down menu to select which droid we wish to remove. So we simply select the first name and the surname from the employees table. Then we're going to remove that droid data from the database. Again, very simple delete statement accomplishes this. The most complicated part, again, is the actual privileges statements. And that works in a very similar way, revoking each of the privileges in turn explicitly, using a very similar system to look at whether it should be a select privilege that's being revoked or an all privileges on each table of the vids database. Finally, we need to get all the different droid IDs for the drop-down, so we run a search on the employees table with the criteria that the employee is a droid as opposed to a manager. Let's take a quick look at the way this works in our application here. We're logged on at the moment as Bob Slack. As you can see, we don't even have the option of adding or removing any employees. So let's log out, and we're going to have to log in here as the boss. The boss is called Jeff Harsh, and his password is money. So let's log Jeff Harsh in. And as you can see, Jeff Harsh has all the information here that Bob Slack has, but he also has two more options. The options of creating a new droid and destroying a droid. So let's call our droid Phil Dozy, give him a phone number of some sort, and a password. Now we're able to create our droid, Phil Dozy, and if we want, we can go on and create another droid. We can go straight away to our destroy droid function, and we can drop down here and we can see all of the employees that are under Jeff Harsh as control. So we can remove Phil Dozy from the database. Then we go to try and destroy another droid. We'll see there are only 3 employees. Let's take a look at the source code here, and we're going to look very briefly at what happens in case the user that is trying to log into this particular part of the site is not logged as a boss. We get this message, the unauthorized message. This is a fail-safe to make sure that even if somehow the employee looked over the boss's shoulder and noticed what URL they were processing in order to add and remove employees, when they went to type that into the address bar themselves, they wouldn't be able to access this information or make any changes because they wouldn't be logged in as the right kind of user. Another thing that I'd like to show you very briefly about the source here is the way in which the permissions are set up, where we add privileges to the new employee. I have 2 arrays here, or 1 array I should say, an associative array, which stores each of the table names and associates it with the particular level of privilege that we're going to grant to the new employee on that particular table. We then use a while loop to loop through that array and perform the SQL on each of the tables. So as you can see, this piece of SQL is a good example of something that's generated on the fly and saves us writing out 10 grant MySQL queries.